Rabbi Tobin. We're still in Sanhedrin. Chapter 4 will be on 33b today. I'm going to do a bit of a chart over here that hopefully will make it easier on people. I don't know if it'll make it easier or harder people. This is the left side, so let's make that visible. Okay, so we learned in our Mishnah a long time ago when we started this whole rigmarole that monetary cases can be overturned. And they can be overturned in either direction, for the zakai or the chayav, the person who is off the hook or the person who is on the hook. And either way, of course, somebody is not getting what they wanted in the lawsuit. So there's money, there's value involved. The Gemara here on 33a brought another Mishnah, a Mishnah from Tractate Bechorot. And that Mishnah was Dinei Mamanot Machzirin. It quoted our Mishnah. It said we can repeal or reverse monetary cases. V'ramin hu dan et adin zika et chayav. I don't have papers for you. When they come, I'll give them to you. They're coming, okay? Et chayav chiev et zakai timei et tahor v'tiher et tamei masha sa'asui v'yishalem mibeito. In all of the cases where it was money, and he let the person off the hook, or he put the person on the hook, or he declared the pure to be impure or the impure to be pure, which matters because impure and pure grain have different market values, because they can be used by different people and they can be used for different things, and there's prohibitions about impure grain. You can't use it, you can use it. How does grain become impure? It's in contact with a creepy crawly thing or a dead body, and all kinds of things can make things impure. So those are real categories, and if the judge got it wrong, and then they went off and they dealt with that grain that way, then that's going to have a monetary effect on somebody. Okay, so all of that, according to Bechorot, it says, what he did, Masha Sa'asui. Okay, so that phrase is really important, because in the Bechorot Mishnah, that means whatever he did is done. You can't reverse it. And the judge has to pay for the mistake out of his private property. Okay? So that was the Mishnah Bechorot. Well, that's a problem, straight up, because it contradicts our Mishnah. So we have a Mishnah in Sanhedrin, and there's a Mishnah in Bechorot, and they're both a Mishnah, and in one case it says you can reverse either direction, and the other says you can't reverse, and the judge has to pay if he were to have wanted to reverse it, if he got it wrong. So as you'll recall, there was a fair amount of conversation about the circumstances. And that's what I'm going to put down the side here, which is going to be the various people. So Rav Yosef said the difference between the two cases is an expert. All right? This is an expert, can reverse, but not an expert cannot reverse. Okay? That was Rav Yosef's version. That was how he explained the difference between the two cases. All right?
What's the expert?
The judge who made the mistake was an expert. So he can reverse it because he's an expert. The judge who made the mistake is not an expert. He cannot reverse it because he's not an expert. So he's an expert in that kind of law. Okay, so if he's not an expert, it's done, and the not expert judge has to pay for his mistake. That kind of makes sense, right? An expert judge can get it right and implement it properly. The non-expert judge is the one who has to pay for the problem because he messed up. Okay? So there's a certain amount of logic to that. Rav Nachman challenged Yosef, and he said, expert doesn't mean the judge. Expert means there is a higher expert judge available, either on the Beit Din, or the Beit Din next door, or the regional, superior court, or whatever it is. And this is where there is no higher expert available.
Doesn't there have to be 3 judges?
Yes, but they might all be idiots.
Does it have to be an
They
expert?
may
Does the
all
expert
be
have
Yes, these are judges. This is, everyone making a ruling here is a judge. An expert judge, a not expert judge, a higher expert judge, not a higher expert judge.
And three of them.
These are not laymen. These are not laymen. If you're really in trouble and you're out in Chutzpah in the rural area of Poland in winter, and you need to rule on something, you could convene a Beit Din with the best three guys you got, and you might be over here.
So the three of them have to pay.
He asked me about a Beit Din. There's not really three. In this case, you have one judge who is giving the ruling. We know that's not how it happened. It was always a Beit Din. But the context of this is there's a single judge. So you have to kind of hold both thoughts in your head. Did this ever really happen? Something happened or there wouldn't be a law. But it wouldn't have been regular because the judges never would have had a system where they're the ones paying for all their mistakes. Right? That's just not going to happen. So some of this is theoretical. Okay?
Did
Now,
judges get paid to rule? Do they make money on this?
they had to make a living, but I don't know. They would normally get paid by communal funds, not by the litigants. Now, Rav Sheshet comes in, and he had a different explanation. And Rav Sheshet said that our Mishnah, the court brings the accused back and new evidence comes up and so on, is when there was a clear Mishnah teaching. In other words, the reversal is based on a matter of clear law. Indisputable, clearly got it wrong. It's like the NFL, you go back to the tape and you see the play again, and it's obvious, incontrovertible evidence that the ruling on the field was wrong, there was pass interference, and you overturn it. Okay? Something is absolutely clear. The Mishnah there in Bechorot is where the judge made a mistake in interpretation. In a case of interpretation, you do not reverse. In the case of a clear Mishnah, you do reverse. Okay? So these are all kind of defensible points of view at the outset. Okay. So then the Gemara wants to know what is interpretation. And the idea was that it is conflicting,
Evidence?
no, traditions. So you have two Tanaim in the Mishnah who say opposite things, and the Mishnah doesn't tell you who won. So the judge ruled according to one of them, even though people generally rule according to the other one, but in the Mishnah it doesn't say who wins. That would be a case. Or similarly with two Amoraim. Okay, now Rav Hamnuna raised an objection against Rav Sheshet about a case of Rabbi Tarfon where there was a cow that was brought from Egypt that had no uterus. When they slaughtered it, the uterus was missing. Rav Tarfon declared it to be treif because it wasn't an intact animal and ordered the defendant to feed it to the dogs. So now the value of the cow is virtually gone. You go from having top sirloin to dog food. And those, if you go to the store, you'll see the price per pound on those is significantly different. Okay? Then evidence arose that every single cow that comes from Egypt has had a hysterectomy. That's what everyone in Egypt does to stop the cows from breeding out of control and lowering the price of meat by increasing supply of their special Egyptian meat. It's like getting Argentinian steak. You know, it's like, it's a controlled market, and so they do this to every single cow, which means the cow wasn't mauled. The cow is in the category of every other cow that comes from them, and that's understood to still be a kosher industry. By the way, that's very questionable. But they understood, and Rabbi Tarfon was very upset because he didn't know what should be done about this. Well, let's see. So what are the possibilities? Rabbi Tarfon is not an idiot. Rabbi Tarfon would be in this category, okay? He's an expert. But he was very upset about this situation, right? And what happens? The incident came to the sages in Yavne, and they ruled that the animal was permitted because of the evidence that I told you. And Rabbi Tarfon and upon hearing this, Rabbi Tarfon says to himself, "Your donkey is gone, Tarfon." He believed he was required to compensate the owner for the cow. So Rabbi Tarfon was actually interpreting it this way about himself, right? He says to himself, Rabbi Tarfon, you just lost, you lost your car, you just lost the lien, there's a lien on your house, or they're going to come and they're going to dispossess you of your donkey to pay this debt. Rabbi Tarfon comes out of this situation where he realizes the meat was kosher and he had it fed to the dogs forcibly. He believes that as a judge, he's going to suffer the loss. So, Rabbi Tarfon thinks that he is here. Okay? But Rabbi Akiva says to him, good, these you can pass out. You give them to everybody. Okay? Rabbi Akiva says to him, you are exempt as any judge who is an expert is exempt from pay. So Rabbi Tarfon thinks he's here, but Rabbi Akiva says that he's here. Get it? So Rabbi Tarfon himself thinks he has to pay. Rabbi Akiva says no, because he's an expert. You don't have to pay. Okay? So Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva seems to agree with Rabbi Yosef. You're an expert, you don't have to pay. Presumably Rabbi Tarfon understands that he's an expert. So Rabbi Tarfon disagrees with Rabbi Yosef. He's an expert who he thinks has to pay. Rabbi Tarfon seems to disagree with Nachman. We don't know, because there's not a higher person around. But he doesn't think he can reverse it. So he doesn't think Rabbi Nachman is right either. As far as Sheshet, does Rabbi Tarfon agree with Rabbi Sheshet? It depends whether or not this new information qualifies as interpretation or Mishnah. We don't know if Rabbi Tarfon agrees one way or the other. If Rabbi Tarfon thinks that the new information is interpretation, he might very well agree with Rabbi Sheshet, in which case Rabbi Akiva does not. But if someone thinks that the new information is like a clear Mishnah, then Rabbi Tarfon obviously disagrees with Rabbi Sheshet. Okay? So we don't know. We know that Rabbi Tarfon does not agree with Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Nachman does not apply to Rabbi Tarfon, and we don't know how Rabbi Tarfon feels about Rav Sheshet. Okay? So we don't, some of these are conflicting, and some of these we don't know yet. Is everyone with me so far? This is what we've been doing the last two lessons. Okay? All right. So that was Rabbi Akiva. Now, Akiva says to Rabbi Tarfon, you erred in a matter of Mishnah. So Rabbi Akiva in the Tarfon thinks that these are connected, that the new information is a clear Mishnah, and you can therefore reverse it, and you don't have to pay. Okay? That's what Rabbi Akiva says in the Tarfon story. Okay? The Gemara is going to answer that. Okay? On 33a, the Gemara said that Rabbi Akiva states one reason and adds one reason. So he says it's a clear Mishnah and you're an expert. Okay, everyone remember that? Rabbi Akiva told him, you're an expert. And Rabbi Akiva told him it's a clear Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva told him two things. This is the top of 33a. No, not in the packet I just gave you. It was in the previous packet. I'm doing review. This is still review. But I need to do this for today to make sense. And we didn't do it as clearly as I would have liked. These are the new ones here. And I don't have the 33A, I don't think. I might.
33A4.
I don't know. Maybe. I'm just running. Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm just giving a running start. If you understand the chart behind me, you'll be fine. You don't need to look at text yet. So Rabbi Akiva says one reason and adds another reason. One, it's because it's a clear Mishnah, and if it's a clear Mishnah, it can be reversed without you having to pay. And the other was you erred in, Rabbi Akiva might be saying you erred in deliberation. Is that what he said? Even if you erred in even if you had erred in deliberation, Rabbi Akiva says even if it's not a clear Mishnah, it doesn't matter because you're also an expert. Okay, so that's the subtle thing we didn't really pick up when we ran through this faster the time before. Rabbi Akiva says to Rabbi Tarfon, don't worry your little head about it. Because I think it's a clear Mishnah case, and you don't have to pay. Okay? It can be reversed. You fix it, and you don't have to pay. But even if you think it's not a clear Mishnah case, because after all, it's the physiology of livestock from Egypt, and I don't know of a Mishnah that covers hysterectomies of cows, so even if it's interpretation, then nevertheless, you, Rabbi Tarfon, you're an expert, and you still can reverse it, and you still don't have to pay, because that's what we do with an expert according to Rav Sheshet. Okay? So that's, Akiva is really giving them all two different reasons, and taking care of most of the chart behind us. Okay? Now, Rav Nachman ben Yitzchak, by the way, all of this, the Rabbi Tarfon thing, was brought by Rava. Rava is the one who brought this whole Tarfon Akiva tradition. Okay? So now Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says to Rava, what is the objection raised by Rav Hamnuna to Rav Sheshet from the incident of the cow? Okay, so so Akiva, according to Rava, has cleared away anything to do with Rav Sheshet in the case of Rabbi Tarfon's cow. Do we agree with that? According to what we just did here, the Akiva arguments have eliminated Rav Sheshet's concerns in the case of the cow. Not that Rav Sheshet doesn't have a legitimate concern, just doesn't apply to the cow, because either way, in the case of the cow, we wind up reversing it and not punishing Rabbi Tarfon. Well, the objection to that would be, if the owner had already fed the cow to the dogs, and it's not possible to revoke the ruling and judge the case again. So here's the problem.
No cow.
When do you not reverse the case? Let's run it this way. When you do not reverse the case, the judge has the debt of the money, right? He's in the red. The judge is in the red for the money, okay? The cow's gone. How is the judge going to return the cow, which has now been eaten by the dogs?
He has to pay money.
But the Mishnah doesn't say that. The Mishnah, what we had earlier was an argument that was about whether or not the judge had enforced a verdict and taken the money in his hand and handed it to the other person. We were dealing with money. He took the cow from him and he fed it to the dogs, thereby destroying the cow, and now it's gone. He can't give it back. So it may not be a good argument, by the way, but that's what we're starting to get at now in this next concern. Rav Hamnuna to Rav Sheshet, in the case of the cow, is where the cow is fed to the dogs, it's not possible to revoke. Since you don't have the cow anymore, you can't reverse it and force him to pay because you don't have the cow to pay, therefore you can't reverse it. Not good logic. But that's what's being said right now at this moment in the Gemara. Okay, Rav Hamnuna would object to the Rav Sheshet being dismissed because Rav Sheshet doesn't apply anymore because you don't have the cow, therefore you can't reverse it and enforce the cow. Rava says, this is what Rav Hamnuna is saying to Sheshet. He says, granted, if you say, in the case of the judge who makes a mistake that appears in the Mishnah, and the decision is not revoked. So if you say it's a clear Mishnah, and it's not revoked, right? Those two things don't seem to go together. So Rava says, Hamnuna was saying to Rav Sheshet, granted, if you say in the case of a judge who errs in the matter of a Mishnah and the decision is not revoked, evidently indicates that the verdict stands. That's why Reb Tarfon feared that he would have to pay. So the objection was really that it was a clear Mishnah, but he can't pay, and it's not reversed because of that. And that was why he was so upset, because we're on opposite sides of this chart, and that's not what you're supposed to do. Clear Mishnah can't fix it. Okay? That's what he's worried about. Because if you reverse it here, how are you going to give the guy his cow back? Clear Mishnah, reverse it, but the cow is gone. So Rav Tarfon is all upset because if you're on this side of the chart, Rav Tarfon can't even pay the guy and make it better. Right? So that's the first thing. That's Rava saying, this is what Rav Hamnuna would be saying to Rav Sheshet. And that's why Rabbi Tarfon feared that he would have to pay, and Rabbi Akiva would say to him, but Rabbi Akiva said to him, you're an expert by the court, and you're exempt from paying anyways. But if you say that the judge erred in a manner which appears in the Mishnah, our Mishnah, not the cow, that it appears in a clear Mishnah, and the decision is revoked, then let Rabbi Akiva say to Rabbi Tarfon, since the cow were to be here, your verdict is not a verdict, and you did nothing now as well, you did nothing then. So let me back that up again, because they do a lot of negatives here. So, if it were a clear Mishnah case, so now we're here. Okay, here. Let Rabbi Akiva say to Rabbi Tarfon, since the cow, if the cow were to be here, so if you had ruled wrongly, but hadn't fed the cow to the dogs yet, your verdict would not be a verdict. You did nothing. It would be reversed. Now as well, you did nothing. So he's saying, if it's a clear Mishnah and the cow were still here, it would be reversed and no harm, no foul. You didn't actually move the cow. You did nothing. So even if you're over here and you fed the cow, you didn't feed the cow. You didn't take the cow from him. You did nothing. You did nothing here. You did nothing there. Therefore, you did nothing. Don't worry. Again, not a good argument. But they're trying to play Rabbi Akiva a different way against Humnuna's objection to Rav Sheshet. Okay, that was just a thing we went through. I feel good that I clarified it. I know you're not clear. Rav Chisda. So now we're going to get Rav Chisda, and we're running forward here. Okay. And this is what's so confusing, because all these guys are dealing with this in a different way. All right, so I'm still on 33a. Rav Chisda said, and he's going to go back to the contradiction between the Mishnah here and the Mishnah in Bechorot, whether or not the court brings the accused back to be judged after new evidence arises. So, Rav Chisda says there, in Bechorot, is where he took the item and gave it to the other with his hand. Remember that? So, Chisda says the judge handed, love that verb here, the money. Okay? The judge handed the money to him. The judge took it in the judge's hand and handed it to the other guy. All right? Rav Chisda says that's the Bechorot case, but the Mishnah is where the judge did not take the item and give it to him. Did not hand it. Okay? He may have ruled anyway, but he actually had in his own possession the money at one point. Okay? That's Rav Chisda. Okay? So I handed the money over as a judge. I've gotten involved. I'm the one who's going to have to pay that back if I'm wrong. Here, I didn't hand it over. The guy collected it on his own, whatever. But the judge wasn't involved in the collection. This is you're doing. Look at the background. Yeah, we will be very soon. All right. Now the Gemara asked a question, and it said Bishlema. Now we're gonna deal with Chisda for a long time. Okay. So a big thick line here. Okay. In the case of handing and not handing, the Gemara is going to say it's fine regarding Bechorot, where he supposedly handed it to him, if he found the innocent liable and the judge took it and gave it to the other person. So it's okay. Rav Chisda is okay if the judge took from the innocent. Okay? He deprived the innocent of his money. That would be okay in the Rav Chisda case. But how can you find the judge liable if he exempts a liable? Not okay if he exempts the liable. Okay, so I let the guy who has the money keep the money. I never took any money as a judge. It didn't go through my hand. So how can you say the Rav Chisda case, where he only has to pay it back if it was in his hand, would apply in this case where he exempted a liable person because the judge obviously never had the money in his hand? Get it?
What if he said to the other guy, you pay him? He didn't touch the money.
Yeah, if the judge didn't handle it, he can reverse it either way and force the money to get repaid, and the judge doesn't have to be liable. If the judge took the money and enforced it himself, the judge is going to have to pay back the money if the judge is wrong. But what if the judge ruled that the guy who had the money wrongly can just keep it? He's just as wrong in this case, but he didn't handle the money. But it's his fault that the money's in the wrong place. Doesn't make sense that you make the judge repay it if the circumstance needs to be that it was in the judge's hand. Okay? So that doesn't work. Rav Chisda doesn't work where the judge makes a mistake exempting a liable person.
So the whole thing is whether or not the judge is liable to pay.
Correct.
This whole thing is.
No, the judge could be letting somebody off the hook. He said, you're not liable to pay, but he was wrong. The guy was liable, but the judge ruled that he wasn't. Right? In that case, who pays? Not the judge, I would hope, but Rav Chisda would say not the judge because the judge never handed it. I don't know.
So can the litigant just
Well, we're not determining the halacha yet. We're just figuring out the arguments here. Okay, but at the end, we're going to know what the rules are. Okay, but it's going to take a little while. So the Gemara explains. Once he says you are exempt, so the Gemara's answer is no. This is, so the Gemara says no. This is like handing. So even though he didn't hand it to him, the Gemara is going to say this is just as if he had handed the money, and the judge is going to be liable for his mistake when the verdict gets reversed. Okay, that's the Gemara's objection. All right, the Gemara asks, but what of the Mishnah which teaches monetary law, the court brings the accused back either to exempt or to find him liable? So now, we've understood Rav Chisda, and the Gemara is going to say, wait, what is all of this? This makes no sense that it's only when the judge hands it, but not if he didn't hand it. We have a Mishnah that says whether liable or not liable, you can return and reverse court cases about money. That's what the whole Mishnah at St. Andrew says. It's very clear. So how can you start making all these kinds of rules when this Mishnah says very clearly you can reverse it either way and enforce it, and it has nothing to do with the judge? That's a great argument, right? That's the argument we've been waiting for. All right, so the Gemara says, what about the Mishnah who teaches that? Granted, you can find the example of to exempt, where the court says at the outset you are liable to pay, and the judge did not take the item from the litigant and give it to the other with his hand. So it's going to say, okay, no problem if he said he's liable, but the judge didn't take it from him. Nobody's going to care. We're going to be over here on this side, and we can flip things around and force people to pay. But how can you find the example if he says you're exempt? But once the judge says you are exempt, it is considered as if he took the item and gave it to him with his hand. So it just kind of repeats the whole thing, and it says, we have a problem because if the judge forces an injustice, it's as if he took it from the person being harmed. And the Gemara answers, the Mishnah, our Mishnah, teaches only the one statement. It should be understood as follows. In the case of monetary law, the court brings the litigant back to be judged to exempt the litigant, which is to the liability of the other litigant. While in corresponding situation with regard to the capital law, the court brings the accused back only to acquit him. So we haven't gotten anywhere. At the end of this whole section, it basically just affirms this. Exactly as we originally understood it, and this has not been dismissed. It also hasn't really been accepted yet. That's where we get to 33b1. Okay? but they do not bring him back to be judged to find him liable in capital cases. And when the Mishnah says the court brings the accused back to acquit him, the acquittal is done not to anyone's liability. But they do not bring him back to be judged to find him liable. And this is an acquittal that is also a liability. The court does not bring the accused back to acquit him if it entails a liability to another person. Okay? So we had some qualification that our Mishnah said in money, reverse either way, but in death penalty, you only reverse with no liabilities. And that's a very interesting phrase. No liability to whom? Okay, that's our Mishnah. In a death penalty case, you can only reverse when there's no liability. So it seems weird because we saw cases where you can reverse a death penalty case where someone else is suddenly liable, right? So you're letting the person off the hook, but you're actually putting other people on the hook. So it might be, Joe didn't kill him, Sam did, right? Well, that's reversing with a liability. Or Joe didn't, mean to kill him. He only meant to steal $10,000 out of his wallet. Well, now he's liable to the $10,000. Presumably, he'd be okay being spared his life and paying the $10,000, but that wouldn't seem to work because it's a reversal with a liability of some kind in it. The only reversal that you can do is a complete exoneration with no forms of liability. That's what the Gemara just said.
So for example, it could be something like Joe didn't kill him, but he had a heart attack out of nowhere.
Well, who's liable there?
Nobody, because the person.
So that's fine.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
That would be no
Yeah,
liability.
he absolutely did. Joe did nothing wrong whatsoever. The guy happened to die, and it's completely understandable how that happened.
So
Right.
You can't interpret the no liability that, as far as witnesses.
So we did that. The Zomimim, if you're letting him off the hook because the witnesses are liars, and there was a moment where they were disturbed by that because the witnesses will now be condemned to death. But honestly, you have to let that happen. Otherwise, the whole system of contradicting witnesses doesn't make any sense. You would never be able to have contradicted witnesses. So that can't hold up either. This little thing over here to the side, we got to get rid of that. It's too limiting. If somebody didn't kill somebody, you have to let him off the hook. Even if there are other negatives that come from that, you have to let him walk free. Otherwise, you're killing him, right? And you can't kill an innocent person. That doesn't make any sense. So that's not going to work either. Okay, here we go. 33B1. Almost. 33B1. Be'en machzirin. I did. Machzirin, lizachut, and chovate dman. And that means, okay, and so is it detrimental to anyone? Now the Gemara is going to answer, and here we are. Ha la kashya. Okay, so the Gemara says, a liability to whom? Wait, this thing right here is what we're going to talk about now. Okay, you can only reverse the death penalty when there is no liability. Huh? Liability to whom? Ha la kashya. It's not a difficulty. So let me get away from where I was looking at so I can see what you have in front of you. This is not difficult because the acquittal of a person accused of murder would be chovate de goel adam, a detriment to the avenging relative of the victim. Okay, so the goel adam in the biblical system didn't exist in rabbinic times, which is interesting that it comes out here in the logic argument because it's a completely irrelevant point practically. The goel adam is the relative of the dead guy. If you killed my brother, I get to kill you unless you get to the city of refuge in time, which is a game of tag. And once you're in the city of refuge, it's home base, and I can't touch you. And once the high priest dies, you're free to go from that city and live your normal life. And nobody can touch you for the killing of this guy. That's not for a murderer. That's for an accidental murderer. That's for manslaughter. So if I thought you killed my brother, if I thought you killed my brother, and I'm chasing you as the Goel Adam, and you get to the city of refuge, and I think, well, at the very least, he's manslaughter, and he's going to have to stay in there and be imprisoned in the city, basically, for a long time. That mollifies me somewhat. And then there's a court case, and they reverse the evidence and they let him walk free. According to this moment in the Gemara, me, the Goel Hadam, I've been harmed. Have I been harmed? But I'm not supposed to be able to kill the guy anyways. But yes, that's what Rashi says. Rashi says, I'm harmed because I'll be so upset to see this man walk free.
But if he's innocent,
He's innocent. So, right. So it's a weird little moment, and Rashi's explanation doesn't seem to solve it. I don't think Goel Adam is a good argument, and thankfully it's not going to stay very long in front of us. Okay, but that was the argument. The Gemara will object to that. Mishum chovate de Goel Dam katlinan leilahai. Because of the detriment of avenging relative, we should kill the person, right? So I'm not going to let them reverse the case and see justice done and I'm going to have him convicted of murder or something and executed because I'm worried that I'm going to hurt the feelings of the brother of the dead guy? I got the wrong guy. He's been convicted. We're going to execute him. New evidence comes in. He's as innocent as you or I. But I don't want to hurt the feelings of his family members who are looking forward to his execution, so I'm going to go ahead and kill him.
that's stupid.
That's very stupid, yes. This is not, this is sometimes how people think, but not good thinking. Okay, v'od, and furthermore, how can Rav Chisda interpret the Mishnah to be stating a single rule with regard to monetary cases as we proposed earlier? My bane and bane. What do the word either and or mean? So you're going to come back to the original problem. That's why I put everything on the board. Here's Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says, this case is if the judge didn't touch it, and this case is if the judge did touch it. But the Mishnah said you can reverse it either way, if money was enforced or money wasn't enforced. And remember, we interpreted that in either way, liable or not liable, forcing the money into the wrong place is like handling it. So once money has moved wrongly, it's like handling it. So that's only a single case. Why would the Mishnah say reverse it either way? That would seem like not handing it, according to Rav Chisda, and the judge would not be liable. So now the Gemara is going to come in and say Rav Chisda doesn't really make sense if it's interpreted according to this logic. By the way, who interpreted Rav Chisda according to this logic? Nobody. The Gemara. So the Gemara forced Rav Chisda to be interpreted by this logic, and the Gemara is now coming in and saying Rav Chisda according to this logic makes no sense. That's the piece that took me a while at home to figure out. The Gemara is playing with us. The Gemara forced us to interpret Rav Chisda in a certain way to solve an objection, and now the Gemara is coming back against its own resolution of Rav Chisda. Yes, the Gemara set up a straw man of Rav Chisda. Okay, here we go. Dun, 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 dun. So why would our Mishnah say this or that? Meaning two different ways in both types of cases, you can always reverse a monetary case. Our Mishnah basically said you can always reverse a monetary case. And it didn't talk about the judge having to pay. Right? So the whole Rav Chisda thing about in his hand, not in his hand, having to pay, not having to pay, is bunk if you listen to our Mishnah. So why would our Mishnah have that? So Rav Chisda would have to have a different interpretation of our Mishnah saying this or that if his interpretation is going to work. The Gemara is now going to offer another defense of Rav Chisda other than the one the Gemara already gave of Rav Chisda. Ravina Amar Kagon Shahayalo Biyado Mashkon. Ravina says that the Bechorot case where the judge has to pay back can refer to a case where the plaintiff had a pledge in his hand. It's not actual money. Okay? So I come to the court and I say, Ron owes me 5,000 shekalim, 5,000 shekels. And he gave me his Rolex watch as a pledge for the debt. And here's the pledge. Make him pay the money and I'll give him the pledge back. Okay? So the court is not actually moving the $5,000 one way or the other, but the court is moving the pledge. Well, just keep the pledge. Or give the pledge back to him. Right? So if I rule in favor of Ron, there's no evidence of a $5,000 debt, give him his watch back. Have I moved money?
No.
It's a symbol of.
But if I'm wrong, Ron's out.
5,000 bucks.
No, Ron made 5,000 because he owed 5,000. He didn't have to pay back, and he got his Rolex back. Right? So we're going to have, it's just another layer of problem that's a little more indirect because the money isn't moving. Now the pledge about the money is moving, but it's a physical object that's moving. So Ravina continues to explain the Mishnah in Bechorot according to his proposal. So this is one where the judge has to pay. Timei et tahor. So for example, so that's a case where the judge didn't move the money, but he moved a pledge, which is like moving the money, and the judge would have to pay the problem. Okay? That's what Ravina is saying to try and save Rav Chisda, according to the Gemara. Not only that, but remember the Mishnah in Bechorot didn't just talk about money, it talked about pure and impure as well. So how would that happen? There's no money there. And the case would be if he declared impure as something that was totally pure, right? De aga be sheretz, and he trusts the sheretz to the food in question. So the judge ruled that your food was impure, and then the judge mixed it with something else impure. But it turns out it was pure to begin with, and now the judge made it impure by doing that. So the judge has cost you a financial loss, even though he didn't move money. Because your impure food does not sell at the same price as, your first cut. It's second cut and first cut brisket here. I know you all have brisket on your mind this week. Okay? Okay, so that's Tamei and Tahor, and he mixed them with the other person's fruits. All right. We got through that section. Now, the Gemara will elaborate on the next ruling of our Mishnah. Yay! Okay, so let's go on. So we got out of the reversing of monetary cases. Let's read the Mishnah again, because it's been a while. Remember, it was a long Mishnah.
And reversing in capital case.
Reversing in what?
Capital case.
Yep, because it was money cases can be reversed either direction, but capital cases cannot. All right. Money cases are judged by 3. Money cases are liability equivalent. Equivalent investment monthly considered by day by night, following day. Shabbos Yom Tov Tu Matara. Okay, it's at the end of the Mishnah. Dinei nafshot matchilin min hatzad, v'akol kshirin ladun dinei mamanot. Kohanim. Must have been another Mishnah. Okay. All right. So it's the dinei nefshot. You can machzir lizkot, but not lechayav. Okay, that piece. All right. Dinei nefashot. Gemara seeks biblical source for the ruling. Okay. So we've seen this pattern before. The Mishnah has ruled, and we want to know on what basis, on what authority does the Mishnah come up with that rule? Can you think of anything in the Torah that says you can overrule a ruling? What was the best verse they came up with so far? Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Right? Justice, justice, you shall pursue. Which was, you shall really pursue justice, or you shall pursue the highest quality of justice, or the highest quality of court. In other words, they didn't really have a good verse for it. The idea, it says, al pi shnayim yakum davar. Something is established by the testimony of 2 witnesses. And it establishes a beit din, and that's it. The whole concept of having an appeal or a reversal doesn't seem to be in the Torah. But it equates with our sense of justice. Right? If you got it wrong, there should be a remedy. And we recognize that in capital cases, if you get it wrong and you've executed the guy, there's no remedy. Okay? So you don't want to have a system where you're getting things wrong and then killing people. Right? So if he was acquitted and you think you got it wrong, you bring him back, you're not going to do that. Right? Because it's just too messy. What if you're wrong again? So if you let the person off the hook, fine. But if you let the person off the hook, they're off the hook forever. If you convict the person, you've got a little time to try and reverse it if new evidence comes in. All right. So Tana Rabbanan, Here's a Baraita. Remember, Baraita is a Mishnah age teaching that's not in the Mishnah. Minayin liyotze mi beit din chayav. Where do we derive that if you left the court convicted, you go out from the court as a chayav, ve'amar echad yeshli lilamed alav zichut, and someone says, wait a minute, I have an argument or some testimony to present to acquit him, minayin shemachzirin oto. Where do we learn that you can actually take that back into the court? There's no one in the Torah that says you can do that. The Torah says, al pi shnaim yakum davar. Once you can establish something permanently on the basis of two. Talmud lomar. So the Baraita is going to say, here's where we learned it from, the following verse. Naki, ... al taharog. An innocent person you shall not slay. Okay, so there's actually a command in the Torah not to kill an innocent person. So if you find out that the person you're about to kill may be innocent, you have another Torah verse that commands you to look at that and to not do that. I know, you might think, do I really need a Torah verse for that? But you do. All right. Okay. Uminayin liyotzei beit din zakai. And how do you know the other side of it, that if the person was acquitted and left the court, ve'achad amar yeshli lamed alav chova, and somebody comes and says, no, I saw him do that murder. We can convict him. Where do you have the basis that you don't go back and convict him? Minayin she'ein machzirin oto. Talmud lomar, because there's a verse that says, tzaddik al taharog. A righteous person you shall not slay. So in Exodus 23:7, it says, Naki vit tzaddik al taharog. The actual verse says, an innocent and a righteous person you shall not slay. So how can the person who you have new negative evidence about be called a tzaddik? Because he went out from the Beit Tzedek. Justice was ruled and he was acquitted. So he's now like a tzaddik and he can't be killed for that crime. Are these good arguments?
Till he goes and does it again.
Yeah, he can be killed for something else. These are not good arguments. These verses are not clearly saying what we're trying to make them say. But we need to find something that allows us to do this, because the system of jurisprudence that we're putting into place makes some sense. Right? So they have a Mishnah, and we're trying to find out what Torah it's based on.
Do they look at the perpetrator's history?
Do they look at the perpetrator's history?
In other words,
no.
If he committed the crime...
Al takir panim b'mishpat. You're not allowed to be prejudiced by looking at the face of the person in the courtroom. Everybody comes in with a clean rap sheet to every court case.
So, in other words, if there was an incident where he tried to kill somebody, that's not brought up in court?
Nope. You only look at the cases here. Right? We did have in a case a few pages ago, there was some logic that got spun out according to they knew the person to be a bad person. That appeared for a moment, but it's not really something they run with. Right? That's like human nature. All right, so this Baraita says that we have this verse in Exodus, V'naki v'tzadik al tarog, you shall not kill a innocent or a righteous person, and that applies to the person who's acquitted and the person who is wrongly convicted, each of them. Amar Rav Simi Barashi. Simi Barashi says, V'chilufa lemesit. The reverse is true to the one who instigates. So, this idea that the person who is found guilty can still be acquitted, and the person who is acquitted cannot be found guilty, does not apply to the idolater. The opposite applies to the idolater. Okay? Because the Torah verse there says, Lo tachmol velo tichase alav, you shall not pity him, do not cover up for him. Which means once he's been convicted, you may not pity him. You must execute him. And the one who is wrongfully acquitted, who's found to be wrong, he can be convicted and he can be executed. So for the idolater, it's the opposite. You kill the person who's convicted, and you can go back and kill the person who was wrongfully acquitted.
Would this still have the same standard of having to have 3 witnesses?
2 witnesses.
2 witnesses?
Yes. Idolatry would require 2 witnesses still.
Okay, because I was thinking, especially in the case of the last example, would apply this one as well. that if it's just one person, they could just be making it up for whatever reason they wanted to get rid of the person.
That's true, but two people can get someone executed, but, remember, we scare the heck out of them when they come into the court and all this stuff.
Being more strict than adulterers and murderers.
Idolaters, not adulterers. Idolaters, yes. There is no worse crime than idolatry in the Torah.
So someone who's innocent, and they have reason for acquittal, but it says you can still execute a person.
Because you're going to execute them right away. As soon as they are convicted, there is no hope of reprieve, and they are executed immediately. Remember, in the other case, Dinei Nefshot, that like you had to convict one day and execute the next day. You had to let time go by. Not with an idolater. There's no mercy on him. There's no covering up for him. He's immediately executed.
What is an idolater?
An idolater is somebody who bows down to a foreign god or statue and intentionally.
And causes other people to do this?
Nope, that's just them. They do it on their own. If you cause other people to do it, how much the more so you should be killed according to this system of law, but no, you just do it yourself.
No.
It's funny because in Avodah Zarah, in the tractate that deals at length with what is idolatry, there's a number of different things, and it's not just offering to the god, it's not just bowing down to the god, like there's this whole thing of squaring off your feet and shoulders in respect to the statue. There's the waving of incense in front of the statue. All this kind of stuff fits within that category. So there was a humorous moment when I was in Kansas. The local modern Orthodox synagogue was the sponsoring unit for the Boy Scout troop. And in Kansas, they have a secret society in Boy Scouts, which is absolutely forbidden by the National Charter of Boy Scouts. But since every single person in the Heart of America Council is in the secret society, when they become an officer of Boy Scouts, they run it right out of the Boy Scout office. And they have a camp for the secret society and all kinds of stuff. And the secret society has initiation rites, which involve pseudo-Native American rituals that were completely made up by white people. Putting on feather headdresses and wearing Indian-ish things straight from a Hollywood movie set, and putting up totems and naming the totems and the powers of nature and the forces of the world, and they burn incense and they swing the incense and they bow before the thing. And I'm sitting here in an Orthodox synagogue watching this thing happen, and I'm like, death penalty. Every single one of you is now liable to death penalty. I never told the rabbi. I just was like, oh my God, this is such narishkeit. I can't believe they do this. But it's true. That's what they did. We'll have to ask the cantor, because that was his shul. The cantor who's coming this high holidays was the cantor in that synagogue. I'll have to ask him if he was aware that they were doing.
Maybe he knew about it.
No, I would never permit it. But no, we don't have that. We don't have secret societies in the Boy Scouts around here. There's the Order of the Arrow, which is an honor society within Boy Scouts, which is open to anyone who qualifies. But the secret society, it's like initiations, it's like campus fraternity mumbo jumbo.
So it sounded like.
Yeah.
So would that be like for Eagle Scouts or not necessarily?
No, not necessarily. And all the top adult volunteers, they get in, and you're in the blank rank of Mikaseh and all this stuff. And yeah, very childish in my view, but okay. I'm sure that will be insulting to anyone from Kansas who happens to ever watch this episode of Sanhedrin. Okay. What else? You know what? There's a break there. Let's take the break. The Mishnah states that in capital cases, verdicts of innocence are not reversed. Yeah. Okay, let's break. 33b2. All right?
Okay.
So we're off and running. I'll turn this off.
When's the
Well,
next
next
class?
Monday is Yom Tov.
So this for a second. So there is one Monday between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but maybe you'll have mercy on me and give me that one off.
So you-
And we'll just meet the Monday after Simchat Torah.
Okay.
Okay?
What date is that, do you know?
Well, because Yom Kippur is on Wednesday that week, which is normally my day off, it you give me Monday off, then I have Monday off,
Okay.
which would be nice, all right? So it's the Monday, the 23rd, no, later than that.
Today's the 23rd.
It's like, we're gonna have 4 weeks off.
So after
So
today,
when is the
when is the
next-
next time we're meeting?
I'll look it up for you, so I have it.
When is that? Next meeting.
It's the, come on, October 28th.
Well, then you
28th?
won't see me for a long time, but we leave the day before for every.
For where?
Monday,
We're
October
going to
28th.
Singapore, Cambodia.
Ah.
I told you that.
They have internet in all those places. You're welcome to join the class still.
Why are you going there?
October 28th will be our next
Paradise
class.
is offering a trip for
October 28th.
people who graduate
All right.
from the
Lashana Tova Tikatevo. Everyone have a good year. Sweet New Year.
For how long?